Okay, team, it's 3 o'clock. Welcome to those that are on live stream. And councillors, good quota today. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping. I've got to be away at 5, so if I suddenly disappear, the other part of Leslie will take over from me. Just to reinforce what
you need to talk to Linda.
Yeah, just to reinforce what I said before, having watched the live streams for the public submissions, unless you hold these microphones really close, it's really hard to hear on live stream, especially for those with quiet voices. So I've got 3 apologies. One, no, I haven't. Barry's on live stream, sorry. From Tom is
Also planning to join on live stream.
Thomas.
He's coming on Zoom.
Oh, well, if he arrives, and apart, Parney's going to be a little bit late. I understand, so.
Here he is. It's Tom.
Cheers, Tom.
Welcome to you too, and welcome to Scotland.
There he is.
And Parney will be
I'm in
late.
England. Okay.
Nice drapes, Tom.
Yep.
Is it whiskey?
He's drinking whiskey, I would say.
Is it whiskey or water?
Yeah.
It's a white whiskey.
It's
So
4
we
o'clock
have,
in the morning. There'll be no
Obviously
even
got
me.
Oh, God.
two councillors on Zoom,
9 o'clock in the morning.
and I've got Brian Dunkley here as the.
Yeah, we're seeing whether he has arrived. We haven't had any contact with him since.
Okay. Well, it's 3 o'clock. We might just move on, and we've got a range of minutes to confirm. So the first one is the minutes of the Bluff Community Board, dated the 18th of March. Grant, thank you. Somebody else fails. Steve looked at me, thank you. Seconder.
Yep.
Any discussions on those minutes? No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 26th of March. Thank you, Darren and Leslie.
No, I was actually an apology.
Oh, your apology. There's always somebody going to trap me. And Trish, thank you.
For the one and only time.
Yeah, exactly. Any discussion on those minutes? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Infrastructure Committee held on the 3rd of April with some recommendations. And Tom's on Zoom. So we'll need a mover and a seconder.
I'll see.
Yeah, Grant, thank you. Leslie was a seconder. Thank you. Any discussion about that and the recommendations that go with it? Darren's looking strangely at me.
I'm just reflecting back about an hour ago. No, I'm good.
All right. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing Committee held on the 9th of April.
Moved.
Moved and seconded, Leslie. Thank you. Any discussion on those? There being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the briefing of council on the long-term planning hearings held on the 11th of April.
Move those.
Second.
Yeah, thank you. Got both those two. Any discussion on those? Aye. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the meeting of council on the long-term plan hearings held on the 11th of April and the 12th of April.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on those? No? All right. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Finance and Projects Committee meeting held on the 19th of March. Grant?
Yep.
Yep, thank you. Steve's looking at me again, thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Submission to the Environment Southland Long-Term Plan. And Michael's volunteered to be the person that answers all the curly questions on that. Oh no, a teamwork. Yes, thank you.
Teamwork.
Teamwork. So I might kick off the questioning for that, Michael. A couple of issues for me. Some of the percentage increases in there are fairly eye-watering as a percentage, but they're not large as far as the dollar value is concerned. Is that a reasonable reflection?
That is correct, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. I noticed in there on page 72 of board books, under budgeted issues, there was the issue of the Waihopai Dam. And I just wanted some clarification on what was proposed for the dam that returned any overflow from the dam back into the Waihopai River itself, as it obviously flows towards the city. And it doesn't declare that. It just says that's a project and work in progress. I mean, it would seem to me that the logical thing would be to have a pipe running through halfway up the dam that you could pull the plug on if the water got too high and allowed to run down the river, because it does talk other places in the document about Environment South and wanting to refrain from just building stop banks higher. That's not the solution going forward. So I just wonder whether you had any more input into that.
I'll hand over to Rhiannon to speak to that particular item.
Thank you.
So I had a brief conversation with the catchments manager, who was very helpful, and just explained that the Waihopai Dam obviously is a big piece of infrastructure for the city, and that a final bit of work needs to be done to make it fully operative. You could request more information in your submission, but basically he explained that the spillover needs work in order that it would be the best design for what they believe is needed now for the city.
Yeah. And I understand that, but I guess what I was signalling is that the dam's about the same height as the subsequent stop banks that run down either side of the river. So
It's
unless
higher
you,
than that.
sorry?
No, it's higher than that.
Yeah, I know, but if you want it to spill over the top of the dam, you've got to have some mechanism, I guess, to be able to keep it within the stop banks, which is what they're suggesting. So
I think the idea is it backs up and back floods to the northeast of the dam, rather than down through the city.
Sure. On page 71 of board books, Michael, under budget increases again, the third paragraph that starts, "This work aligns with the focus of Invercargill City Council," and I read that paragraph and I've got no idea what that actually means. Given that this is a document that we will subsequently forward on, or some thoughts that we'll forward on, I don't know what they're referring to in that one paragraph.
Through self, Chair, that's in relation to the works that we've got in relation to flood protection as well.
Okay.
I know, Rhiannon, you've had discussions with them as well. I wonder if you can highlight on that.
Yeah, so it might just simply be that I haven't worded it as clearly as might be useful, so I'll certainly take that on board in terms of writing the final submission. But what it's essentially saying is that Environment South are indicating that they need more funding, both to cover the increasing costs of doing business, which all councils are experiencing, but then also to fund new work in the area of flood protection, which first of all is primarily around data collection and planning. Now, obviously, this council has discussed many times in the context of climate change that that's a priority for us, and we've been working with the regional council on that issue. So that's simply what I'm pointing to, is it's aligned with what this council has been discussing with Environment South and previously.
Okay. And the last issue for me is on pages 86 and 87, where it refers to managing floods and the LiDAR data that's required to know where these rivers will flow when we get peak volumes. And just a reflection from me, I guess, that that LiDAR data's been on the horizon for quite some time, and we just don't seem to have a handle on it yet. And it's quite critical that we do have, because it tells you where our pressure points are and where our capacities within the stop banks are. It was interesting that about 6 months or a year ago, at an Environment Southland meeting, they were talking about mitigating flooding, which wasn't just to build stop banks. It was also to consider whether you breach a stop bank to allow the excess water to flow somewhere that's less damaging than to flow into a city. And they used Gore as the example when they had the floods in Gore. With hindsight, it would have been great if they could have breached the bank further north, and allow it to flood onto a farm, which you'd have to make pre-arranged to be able to do that, because the damage to the farm's far less expensive and far less damaging than having it run into the main parts of Gore. But there seems to be nothing around that. Maybe it's because we don't have the LiDAR data that shows where these flows can go and what the capacity of the current system is. So I just wanted to signal, I guess, if we're going back to feedback, that that's an area of frustration that we've been talking about that for several years and don't seem to have it yet.
Through yourself, Chair, just we haven't incorporated that specific feedback because our understanding is the LiDAR data is available. This is about taking it forward to modelling it in relation to those catchments,
Sure.
Which does take quite a bit of work and time in relation to the flood modelling. That's the piece of work that they were referring to in those sections that you talk about on 86 and 87. So we haven't referred directly to that because it is about the ongoing modelling of the actual data. My understanding is the data has been validated, I think up to 95% was my last piece of information, but it's the modelling we're waiting for.
Because I noticed it in the submissions from them that they've got some significant growth in one of their teams or a couple of their teams around data collection and around expertise to be able to do the modelling as well. So that's pushed some of the percentage increases quite high. Yep. Any other questions, people? Rangi.
Thanks, Chair. It's around the. I guess it's really clarification and justification of the money spent on the Duns Road pump house that most people drive past every day. Now, obviously, the cost of that megastructure will be passed on in rates increases. I mean, that's how it works. So, I'd just like, as councillor, for this council to. I don't think we've had a presentation on that, on its why the engineering needs to be like that or whatever, because when you compare the old pump house to what's there now, I mean, the thing that's there now looks like it could empty rocket tip in a minute. You know, I just love to actually get the science behind it, why we need it, what the cost is, and justify part of why our rates are going up, because that is part of it.
Through yourself, Chair, that is something that we can request from Environment Southland. How wouldn't be part of this submission, but we could ask them to present back to us separately on that particular project.
It's just it's not really a question for them, but I think it's something justifiable to the thousands of people that see it every day.
Yeah, my understanding was that the government and the shovel ready stuff funded 75%, and Environment Southland had to find the other 25%. Darren.
Yeah, they did. It was higher than expected, and I think there was another technical issue, but that became the issues of the contractors rather than the ratepayers. If you're looking for a motion, Mayor Clark, I'm happy to move the motions as they sit, with 4 agrees to provide a submission. Under 5, I think all 6 points are valid. Actually, I thought it was a really well worded paper from a urban perspective that looks at the issues through some of the changes and things that they're looking at that face us. With LiDAR, it's worth remembering that this council also made a decision to remove from our budget item the opportunity to work on that LiDAR information from our perspective. So it's not all on a yes. But I also think that for item 6 we should agree to request to being heard. We know through the submissions process that that opportunity for one-to-one feedback is always really useful.
Yep,
I'm happy to move.
I'll second that.
Yep, thank you. I've got that. I've missed Tom here. Tom?
In terms of the flood protection work, I support the proposal that ES has made, and in particular the fact that Southland should fund those rather than individual TAs trying to fund them. That might be a little bit painful from Invercargill's point of view from time to time, but we need to remember that the best flood protection for Invercargill might be things that happen in the district, rather than things that are done, actually physically in our TA. However, work that's required to decide what the best projects are has not yet been done. And there is a question about why that fund needs to start now. And I did raise this question actually in the Climate Change Forum. That there is no reason, I don't think, why we need to start collecting that. They need to start collecting that money now. And given the pressures that are on people with respect to cost of living at the moment, you know, that could easily be deferred by a year or 2 years while the work is done. And I know that the work to decide what the best thing to do does need to be done, but that does not cost all of the money that will be collected in the coming year. So I think a reasonable position for us would be to say that we support the position, but question the timing in terms of when the rate begins to be collected.
Yeah, Michael.
Through yourself, Chair, I'll refer to item 5, recommendation 5A. Our submission is about supporting the planning work activity. Until such time as the planning is done, the infrastructure can't be included into the forward plans. So we've only included support in relation to the planning activity.
Yeah, the intention, I think, is to develop a war chest, Chair, which I would question at this time. I think, you know, there are so many pressures on ratepayers at the moment that doing the work is important and collecting money to do the work, but to develop a war chest beyond that, I think is inappropriate. So I think that would be part of my argument in the submission.
Yep, thank you, Tom. I've got Michael, if you can't see him, nodding in the background, so I think he's nodding.
Yeah, through self Chair, we'll look to add that component in if the seconder and mover and seconder are comfortable with that.
Yep.
Yes.
Happy.
Yep, both got that. Any further discussion? No, all right. Oh, sorry, Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just probably it's a little bit to Tom's question around just the financial sustainability of the plan. I note the dividend flow from Southport's flatlined, which if I looked at the Southport future forecast revenue, theirs isn't flatlined. So I wonder what the cash dividend flow back is and why it isn't increasing as the revenue is increasing. And then the costs, I know nearly 50% of the rates increase is to do with services and costs, and I think we need to challenge and look for assurances that they have done what we've just done and gone through line by line their cost items and see where they can extract any savings. And then it's a little bit to ring Councillor Pottinger's point around the outflow by the airport or the pump station, and Chair for Region for Environment South and Cayman, said at the air meeting that they'd had a markup in their project management and it led to significantly more cost. So they're embarking on a big capital project program, and the most recent project they've undertaken, they haven't shown, in my view, prudent project management. So I think we need to look for reassurances that they're...
Sorry, that wasn't an ES issue, that was the point I referred to earlier. That was a contractor issue.
Yep.
So it didn't flow back to the ratepayer, the errors that were made.
But I think the Chair acknowledged that they hadn't managed the project well in that meeting. Anyway, I'd be seeking some reassurance that capital spend in their long-term plan is going to be well managed.
Yeah, I can confirm that Nicol said to me, as Darren said, the contractor wore the cost of the mistake.
I'm not debating that. I'm saying, why did it arise?
Yeah, sure.
Did they scope the project well? Did they manage it through?
Sure. Yep. Leslie.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Just to follow up Councillor Dermody's first point, on page 100, ES are indicating that they're seeking the ability to reduce their shareholding in Southport. Did we want to make an additional comment on that, or are we going to be silent on that point for the moment? their suggestion is that they would reduce from their current 66 to 51%. So it is
So CLD.
quite a significant seeking to reduce.
Oh, well, we haven't looked at similar.
Indeed, but what I'm saying is, do we wish to comment on that, particularly for ES?
Through yourself, Chair, if the council and again the mover and seconder are comfortable, we could add in seeking reassurance in relation to their revenue stream, including specifically around Southport, but also around have they reassurance that they've done the cost saving exercise.
And something additional, I feel, about the fact that they've made the statement they're seeking to reduce their shareholding in Southport. So perhaps some information behind that.
Says they haven't made any decision at this point.
It's an option.
You got that, Michael?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, Chair.
Any further discussion? Right, we've got a mover and a seconder. Have moved some. Have you sorted? We have. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, Trish, did you?
No, it's fine.
You're just waving at me? Yep. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. The next one on the agenda that we had there was the Ngaitahu offer of support, and all of you will have received an email from me yesterday to say that item has been left on the table, and Michael and I will negotiate whether we have an extraordinary meeting on the 14th of May after the committee meeting, or whether we go through to the next formal council meeting, which is in May. It's just that I required further information, and I need everybody to be here because it's such a contentious issue around the whole Three Waters thing. We need time to discuss it. I felt a bit, I guess, a little bit pressured by getting this just before a long weekend and then having to make some decisions on it. So Michael and I have agreed that we'll reschedule it a little bit later, and I'll confirm whether it's one of those two dates. The next item is the S Street West update. Russell, I knew you were smiling. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you.
So, do you want to talk to this paper or just take it as being read?
Just a couple of comments that thank you for the opportunity to present it. We continue to work really closely with the developer over the last few months to actually get to this point. And I think what hopefully you're seeing in the concept plans are how we're, I guess, focusing down on the best solution for that area. And I'm happy to take some questions.
Yep. Any questions? Yeah, Ringy.
Just regarding, S Street West, that used to be, I remember it, and now became Wapna Place. Now the designation of that land, I got some information back from the 4th floor saying that it's managed under the Reserve Management General Policy by Council's Reserves team. Now, what does that mean? What is it? It's not a reserve, is it, or what is it?
The area that we commonly all know as Wapna Place is made up of a number of parcels. There's a parcel to the northern end, which is the former Wapna Place reserve, and then there's the parcel to the south, which is made up of the closed road and a section of land that we acquired when we closed the road. So there's two pieces, but for all practical purposes, for the last few years, we've had our Parks and Recreational team, I guess, manage and coordinate the activities on that area, although that the formal management plan technically only covers the piece that's designated as reserve.
So can a road just automatically put a road there?
It's a piece of land that council owns. You can do what you like. You could vest it as road. You could do a whole lot of things.
Okay, but we don't have to change it from reserves. So my other question is, how is this new slip lane, is it a slip lane or whatever it is, how's it going to be managed? Because obviously it's shown as for coaches. Yeah. Is there going to be a barrier that the coach driver unlocks, or how do you stop, the natural driver just driving down there.
That is one of the challenges that will continue to be there, that we will have. We've seen, I guess, a range of behaviours in our other Esk Street, and part of what we're seeking from the developer and their traffic engineers are a range of options that we could use. From, I guess, you could have protection barriers if you wish. You could have vertical elevation, as in some form of ramp type thing to discourage people to come through, through to perhaps some form of, and we're investigating whether or not you can use some areas like perhaps a bus lane, and therefore if you weren't a bus you could be prosecuted, you could be issued a ticket.
Okay, so that is the responsibility though, not of council but of the developer.
Mr. Chair, in working with the developer, that we're working through and assisting and actually having some input into that, because the decision of how it's operated will end up, respectfully at this table to make a decision on. The developer will be working to come up with the best solution, but we'll need to bring back the ways that you can have options to control that and make the choice. Because at the end of the day, the land is owned by council, and council will be responsible to manage and manage that area.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Right.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And Russell, thanks for your work on this and also for your in terms of progressing it. Just wanted to understand in terms of the expenditure that we're forecasting, which I think is the 2 million plus 1 million. 1 million for contingency around the soil, and then the 2 million. What do we propose, and how we'll manage that reporting against that expenditure? Like where will it come through? Will it come through infrastructure, and will we do a budget versus actual, so we know we're on track with our spend and that sort of thing? Or?
That's what I'd anticipate. It's an infrastructural project.
Yeah,
but it could report to any committee, but infrastructure will probably be the most logical place.
Yeah. And so when would we likely to see that start to come through infrastructure?
As soon as we essentially get the design signed off, we'll be putting there's a few pieces that we need to put together just around the terms and conditions of the development agreement, and that's going to have all of that detail around reporting requirements that will come from the developer through to us and then through to the infrastructure committee.
So would you think like June, or would it be?
Where are we at? Yes, I think that's probably about fair.
Correct, but I think that it's most likely the logical construction time will be a little bit later than that, and coming out of the winter months rather than the...
Yeah, but it'd be good to see budget and just get a good, robust system in place around spend. Yeah, thank you.
Russell, I think it's fair to assume that it's a little bit like ICL, that while we're contributing financially, we're sort of in some ways working through a joint venture process. We're allowing the developer to do most of the, I guess, heavy lifting and do most of the work, which I think is a real positive thing for council. And I also think it takes away the risk that we don't get the work done in time for his opening, where if he's managing it, he's definitely got the incentive. And certainly the cost factors are just a fraction of what was initially projected for that part of town.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I think one of the things we're doing, we're actually bringing our own varying expertise to the table. They have different areas that they focus on, but certainly some of the time and coordination issues that were faced through Esk Street are minimised by the approach that the developer is leading that construction. But equally, we want to, I guess, manage the quality and the output as they do that work. So they won't necessarily be doing what they want. They'll be having us watching.
Sure. Just two other quick things. When's your Three Waters work likely to take place, and when's it likely to be finished? Just ballpark figures.
So, Mr. Chair, the sewer main is predominantly completed.
Okay.
And the water main is being delayed slightly so that the developer can do some other works in the street, and then we'll come in after that. So we've tied that up, and that's likely to be towards the mid-late June for the water main.
And the final thing is the issue of the columns and the location of the clock and the redesign of the clock structure. Just if you could share that, because we don't have people seeing the plans that we're seeing, which are quite graphic. and my other half at home, who used to be a very outspoken opponent of doing anything in Wagner Place, is now quite pleased about what she sees.
So, Mr. Chair, I guess there's two pieces. We're still working through the column, I guess, strengths, and that's something which, although is related to the project, is a little bit independent of the developer. The clock is, in one of the recommendations, has been recommended to be brought more easterly than its current position, which really aligns with the centre of Esk Street and the boundary of the D Street. So it really stays in the same place. What we do know is that the clock mechanism needs some refurbishment. I guess it's been sitting there ticking away for 20 years, and it's time to take it to bits and actually fix the bits. And that's the ideal piece. If we're taking it out, then its ability to be removed and replaced is there. So putting it in a new structure probably is one of the easier things to do than, because we had to take it out of the old structure to fix it anyway. So, and how it looks, I guess, is the difference between being a concept, which you see in the plans, to a preliminary and then a final design where we'll bring them back, which actually shows you what it is planned to look like.
Sure. So two quick things about that. Is it reasonable to assume that the clock structure, the clock mechanism won't be in its traditional form, that the clock might be driven by something more modern, and the bit that you like to look at the bottom will be different?
I think one of the things with the clock is that it is the original mechanism rebuilt by the team back in the 1990s. It came out of a box. And I think the mechanism will still continue to be there. The mechanism drives the hands by a rod, so I guess we will need to continue to evaluate it, but where we could keep it in its original condition, we would want to do so. We wouldn't want to change it. I guess just like any person who restores a vintage car, you keep it as original as you possibly can.
Sure. And on the issue of the columns, the 4 columns, is it practical that if they are not up to a certain level that you'd be happy with, that we would strengthen them as opposed to look to remove them?
I think you need to take that in 2 steps. We need to decide what strength they do meet, and then where they what remedial measures, making sure that it's I guess a sensible and cost-effective solution. But the concept design with the clock actually looks to, I guess, enhance where the clock's position is and make it more of a feature by bringing it forward. But it also looks to centralise the columns and actually give them, I guess, a bit more perspective and purpose. Whereas at the moment they sort of sit on the side of the street and a little bit lost. The clock being closer to them probably makes a lot more sense in context to the street and D Street. So,
okay, thank you. I've got quite a few questions now. Barry, are you with us?
Yeah. Thanks for your report. I was under the understanding that we were going to have pop-up bollards, so the bus drivers could actually turn them up and then put them back down, because we're only talking about 6 buses up there.
My understanding was there was discussion about how do we control the area, and I guess that's we need the full range of options, and then the opportunity to select the best solution.
Yep. Evelyn.
Kia ora te koromatua. Given that there's been conversation about it being of similar to East Street, although not necessarily to the level, will there be rainwater gardens as part of this? I recognise this is high level drawings that we've got now, but is that the intention, that we continue that theme of utilising what we put in to minimise other impacts, given that we're also hardening off a significant portion of the streetscape?
So, Mr. Chair, the current concept doesn't have any rain gardens, but the idea being is that that sort of treatment would be better handled as the water is discharged towards the Odapuni in Liddell Street in the future. So that's the option. Often your rain gardens are best positioned where you're going to get the maximum effect, and given that the limited number of vehicles, it doesn't necessarily bring high value to actually have them there. So it is consideration for the whole drainage network, but we think that it's quite possibly better suited closer to the outlet.
Sure. But this will all come back to us again on numerous occasions before we get to.
That's correct. As we get to the next stage of preliminary design and then through to final design, those will come to council.
Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Russell, just the 4th million, the $1 million contingency for the clock mechanism and anything unforeseen, is the intention that that's going to be pretty much on the same timeline so that the clock is back at the same time as the new pathway is done, or are we expecting the clock to be a slightly later mechanical challenge?
Mr. Chair, it's a really good question. I guess we're just trying to identify those parties who are experienced and the right people to do the clock mechanism, and we won't want them to be too far apart. Where possible, we'll have the clock back as soon as the structure is ready, because part of the natural construction will be to actually install it whilst you've got the right equipment, and you don't want to be driving too much over everything else. So it shouldn't be on a different timeline, but at this stage we can't confirm that.
You'll be reporting back, so we'll have a pretty good steer. Thank you.
Correct.
Rangi.
Thanks, Chair. Look, speaking of timelines, the current timeline has it. You just told us what it is, but I'm going back to a meeting in December that both yourself and Aaron were at with me, and we were presented a timeline that had council finishing its relevant work in January 27. What's changed? Has something been omitted, or I mean that's stuck in my head, that particular timeline.
So, Mr. Chair, part of that is really being driven by the developer's timeline for, I guess, completing their hotel and them being able to control their own destiny and time. That's one of the advantages for this approach, working with the developer, is that they manage the time. So they've really reset the timeline to align. And the obvious thing that I see is that if their opening is planned in a 2025, they've actually got to have the road and the access way open to get the buses to where they want them to be. So that's why 2025 is part of that.
So that January 27 was if council did the roading part.
My understanding is part of that is really about if it was done independently. I think the advantage being is that they're able to work amongst themselves, and that's really where we struggle in East Street, having to work with two other parties. So
I'm not sure if that's answered the question, but thanks.
Darren. Oh, sorry. I'll come back to you in a minute. Darren.
One quick question. It may have been in there, but I might have missed it. The clock. Are there plans to reinstate? God, I hope not. The bells.
Yeah.
Because they did create some issues for the accommodation in that area, and bearing in mind there's going to be a whole lot more.
So, Mr. Chair, I believe that when we rebuild the clock, we'll need to have the capabilities of the bells ringing, whether or not the bells are rung or not, can in fact be managed as it has been in the past. So
thank you. Quasimodo is very happy.
I was going to say you might have a good job, Darren.
Yeah, the bell ringer.
Christmas Day, New Year's Eve. Yeah, no, Aaron. Steve.
I just, Councillor Pottinger asked the question about the bus access, but I just wanted to commend the team and behind the scenes working on this. So I got really excited when I saw this plan come through, and I think it shows that there really has been attention paid to some of the concerns that were raised throughout the Walking Place submission process. When I walked down S Street, heading west, even from this building, the only concern I had was I quite liked the view of the clock between the pillars looking down Esk, and so just a credit to the team of designers and the work that's gone into listening, I think, to some of those concerns. It's a great result in my opinion.
I think the shell of the clock will be quite unique as well, which would be great. Any further questions? No, we've got a suite of 4 recommendations. Somebody like to move those? Right. Trish, any further discussion? No? No. Excellent. All those in favour?
Aye.
carried. Thank you, Russell.
I'm against.
You're against. Yep.
On recorded, thank you.
Yep. Do you want to help us with why you're opposed?
I've been opposed to it from day one. You're opening up that wind tunnel, which
Okay.
I've explained at length.
Yep.
And looking at that lower S Street coming up from Leven Street with all the work that's been done, there's plenty of other options for buses to go into the front of that new hotel.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next issue is the local government New Zealand membership renewal, and we've got a figure in there. And Patricia, can you help us with what we paid last year?
I can, Mr. Mayor. We paid for a membership last year, excluding GST, $55,445.71.
Gosh, 20,000 more.
No, it's not 20,000 more because your figure was excluding GST.
Excluding GST.
This is inclusive.
Including GST, $63,762.57.
Yep, up about
10 grand.
Yeah, a little bit less than that.
And the access to Aquila.
Okay, anybody like to discuss? Yeah, Rangi.
I might as well start off first. 63,000 is exactly the amount for the low mow to be changed to high mow. So just to put it in perspective, like I'm just quoting an article that from the media on October 21 when Three Waters was in its raging, and it says there is a profound dismay that LGNZ blithely signed a heads of agreement with the government in July in exchange for a 2.5 billion cash support package to sweeten the sell to councils. Signing that agreement without the engagement or consent of its member councils was a flagrant breach of good faith. And if no one knows what blithely means, and I didn't, I looked it up, and it was New York Times word of the day. It means in a casually cheerful but somewhat neglectful way. So, I mean, to LGNZ, that to me on its own is a red card, the way they handled Three Waters. They're supposed to represent us, and no way did they do that. But, you know, I saw Timaru pulled out from LGNZ, but after corresponding with the mayor this morning, they're back in again.
Yep.
So it's an annual thing, this in, out, paying your sub, not. Look, I'm coming into this meeting, I was all set to give it the heave-ho, but I'm sort of open to see what people say about the value of it, especially staff, actually. Politically, 14 years on council, I see no value, but staff may have other resources that it provides.
Yep. So just a reflection of that, I had the same reservations as well. I've been backwards and forwards to local government New Zealand conferences and sat there and wondered why I was there. But having said that, if we are looking at future finances as an example, if LGNZ can do one of three things, they more than cost what we're asking for. If they can keep the audit costs down, which we talked about this morning, that potentially covers more than what's on that paper. Second issue is the issue of GST return for us on what we collect, which we don't get back. And the third issue that they're lobbying for is the inability for us to rate government departments, and that they should pay their way, which they don't at the moment. They're exempt from rates. And so any one of those three, if they can get one of those across the line, will more than cover our costs. And I've clearly come to the conclusion that we can't do it by ourselves. Yes, Timaru went in, opted out, and have come back in. I think part of the increase that we're facing is more than cost of living. It's the withdrawal of Auckland out of the system that has hurt the organisation. They were big donators, obviously, the size they are, and they've got their own structure now with a new minister. I sometimes worry about what value we get from it, but I think that we're better to be in the fold than out of the fold. So, I've got a long list of people. Tom, you there, Tom?
My question, Chair, is about the total cost of membership I think it was Patricia that answered. I presume that is the cost of the direct cost of membership. But I wonder if she has a number for how much it costs us in total, given the number of flights, meetings, time away, hotels, expenses, and so forth, and what that adds up to. Was that all included in the number you quoted?
I can confirm, Tom, that that's just the fee for the joining the organisation. And from my observation, we're probably the most lean council in the country. Michael and I regularly go. Sometimes he doesn't go. I don't take anybody else. Alex goes at local government New Zealand cost.
And Darren.
Yeah, and so, but some councils have 2, 3, and 4 and 5 people there, and I just can never justify that. So we are very lean, but it wouldn't be too hard to work out what that is, what return flights are, and accommodation and meals over probably 3 or 4 visits a year.
Through you, Chair, if I mean, the point of my question was not so much to argue that we shouldn't. I think we do need to be inside that tent. So I support membership.
Sure.
But I think we can control those other costs.
Yeah.
So it might be that we're as lean as we can be, but I mean, I just think we should, you know, be very careful and spend as little as we possibly can, because the benefits that you talk about are benefits that flow from membership rather than going to conferences.
Yeah.
So
I think we should be reducing that to the minimum that we possibly can.
Yep, and a good point, because the next paper we've got coming up will cover that exact issue about how many people we send to an AGM. And again, I'm keen on being frugal in that area, and not just sending large numbers, because you're quite right. What one person gains by attendance is not improved by having 4 or 5 people there. So yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Darren.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I think it's time for us to move on from the Three Waters thing, because the position that local government New Zealand took then was under a different regime, really, and I shouldn't really use that word. It was under a different, not governance structure, membership.
Team.
And no one would deny the dissatisfaction of the membership and the issues that resulted from perhaps a poor decision. I completely echo the comments that it's better to be in the tent than outside, because looking for a united voice for advocating our position is obviously their primary role, apart from the training opportunities and connections that LGNZ provides. And it's at times like this, when there's a new government and there are new relationships being forged, and even though quite often the bureaucrats behind the scene remain the same, forming those networks with the new ministers is quite important. It is looking at itself in my experience, and I mean, Alex alluded to the fact that I sit on Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, not only the membership group, but also a governance group that's looking at how it structures itself, given the large MSD contract that it has. And actually, we only meet in person once a year. Everything else we do on Zoom, because it's a much better use of our time for a meeting that's only going to take an hour, 2 hours, to say nothing of the costs that it saves. So at least there is that type of examination that's going on within. That said, we do recognise the fact that meeting face to face from time to time is useful. Being a part of it, look, I'm encouraged to hear that there seems to be support, because if there wasn't, I'd probably have a whole lot more to say. But I do favour us retaining that membership. Thank you.
Leslie.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I'm a definite supporter of belonging to the collective. Won't surprise anybody to hear that. Look, there is no way that this council acting alone could generate the sort of conversation on what we might see as key local government challenges that being a member of LGNZ's collective strength can give us. We could not even knock on the door, let alone be inside the door, on a number of issues we perceive as key if we didn't have that strength behind us. So on that basis alone, I am very much in favour of us retaining this membership. I think we get very good value for that membership fee. But when you add on just the examples you used of the audit issue alone, we would have no chance of making that argument. The education packages that we've now got available, and they're very much improved, as we all know, recently, and the advocacy on a whole range of other issues that are important to us, including the nationwide housing and social issues. Yeah. I think there is no doubt we're getting very good value out of that membership, and we would, I believe, deeply regret stepping away from it and trying to act as a sole council at the bottom of the South Island.
Yeah, thank you. Alex.
Thank you. I don't really think that I'm going to say a whole lot of what I was originally going to say, because I'm really pleased to see that there's a lot of support for this around the table. But I just wanted to touch base on what Councillor Pottinger had said before about the disappointment around the free water situation. Like Councillor Ludlow said, this is an entirely new team of people that we have around the table at National Council now, and our National Council now is entirely focused on ensuring that that trust and engagement has been rebuilt. So even within this year alone, there's been rural and provincial online, zone meetings, combined sectors, which our mayor was with a couple of weeks ago when we were in LTP hearings. Face-to-face rural and provincials. They're really trying to make sure that they get out into the networks and get everybody on board and really rebuild that trust. So for us, you know, like, this is 0.07% of our rate take. In terms of like what the mayor mentioned before, if we get the audit advocacy across the line alone, that would be, you know, a tenfold comparison to what we could get back ourselves. If we are, as Invercargill, less than 1% of the entire nation's populace, so if we were out there being that 1% on our own, to Councillor Sofa's point, there's absolutely no way we'd be getting our foot in the door with the PM unless we stomped our feet incredibly loudly, and, you know, nobody wants to be the bad child, the black sheep of the family. We have a huge advantage around the table of having people and like we're having a person as a National Council member, and I say that because I'm actually, alongside Mayor Tim Cadogan, the only person south of Christchurch that actually has any kind of voice for New Zealand around the National Council table. So to get rid of that, I think, would be a little bit remiss as well. The support that we receive through Te Marawata, young elected members, Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, all the other bits and pieces and stuff is really advantageous to us as well. But I think I will leave that there. Okay. Thank you.
Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You know, I do hear Rangi's point, and it was disappointing that, you know, they took that stance, albeit, you know, it is under a new group of people. So, you know, I think I'd be in favour of us remaining a member, and I think we're better off to be inside the tent also. I would like to see us, and if there's the opportunity to, with our check for membership, send back a request to ensure that they do everything they possibly can around audit fees to get that benefit back to us, and this year more equitable sharing of revenue. You know, we have the lowest level of revenue sharing in the OECD at 10%, and I don't agree it's GST. I think it needs to be on a per population basis. I think that's a much fairer way to go, but they need to work really hard on that. And the other thing I'd ask is, and it was good when they did come down there a couple of months ago, that at least every 6 months someone comes down from the executive. Now, it could be online, doesn't have to be physically, to save cost, but it would be good to have them in our whare just having a bit of a hear and listen to what our concerns or grievances are. So I'm supportive, and if we can attach those three things to our check, that'd be good.
Sure. Maria?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that, you know, it's no secret that when I sat and watched as a member of the public this council go through three waters and the difficulty of making those decisions and the feeling of the lack of trust in LGNZ, that I also grew to come to that position. And as of recent, and finding out today some more initial information that helped kind of get me on the on the fence, because I wasn't there when I got here today. And since then, reading a media statement about the local government NZ lobbying the government for the GST rates back on GST, I kind of sat here and thought, well, it is a new team, and I did not have a lot of faith in them. But I have to say that their behaviour and their monitoring of themselves and being critical of how they're delivering their services has been quite positive to see. I just wanted to comment on that as a membership organisation, when you change the way you deal with your members significantly like they have, it's a full credit to that team.
Thank you. Evelyn?
Yes, tēnā koutou katoa. So I am a member of Te Maruata. We meet monthly via Zoom, and we have one meeting a year, which is at LGNZ conference. I find to my horror that the ability to be a member of Te Maruata is still not being widely known within this council. So there are several people sitting at our table who could be members should they wish to. But I do find, as sitting in a somewhat isolated position, because we're appointed, not elected, that it is helpful to have other people with whom I can speak who actually understand what the actual issues that I face are, as opposed to what the General Council membership is. I also really valued the fact that the first year I went to LGNZ via council, the second year that my people sent me to LGNZ because they valued the networking opportunities and the ability for me to bring back other information to them. And I really think we underestimate the importance of that. I think that having Councillor Crackett as the young elected members rep, that Councillor Ludlow being there at the table, we're punching well above our weight in some ways, and I think that I would like to support, even though I don't get a vote, I would like to support that Invercargill City retains its membership of LGNZ and strengthens its hands in the negotiation process through its advocates at those various fora. So thank you.
Trish.
So it's no surprise that I absolutely agree with everything everybody else has said, but I value also the opportunity for the learning opportunities that we have through the system. We don't have to go and look for someone to help grow, to build our capability. We can use the networks and the systems they've got to help us develop as a council, and I think that alone is valuable in itself.
Any further discussion? Okay, so we've got two recommendations. One, we received the report, and two, if somebody would like to move that we renew the membership. Thank you, the twins again. Any further discussion? No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Next agenda item is actually where Evan was touching on, which is the council representation at Local Government New Zealand AGM and the Local Government New Zealand Conference of 2024. So those that have read through that paper will see that there's quite a wide range of potential participants at that. Again, my view of the world is that we need to be frugal in this area. Sending 4, 5 and 6 people up does seem to be a bit of a junket for some, and in light of what occurred last year, I'm happy not to go to make opportunities for others. I get quite a bit of interaction with Local Government New Zealand through the normal sector ones that I go to, so open to having some discussion about who would go. I guess my first question is, would you like to participate? And that's a question to Tom. Yes, he's got his thumb up. That's good. Rangi.
Just to give an idea of cost, it's in Wellington this year, so you're looking at just the membership ticket to go to the thing is about $1,000.
Yep.
And then you've got your flights to Wellington and accommodation 2 nights. So maybe $2,000 per person.
Yep.
So that just to give an idea for the committee.
Yep.
Mayor Clark, I signalled to you prior to the meeting an interest in
Yes.
attending. I have been previously, but not in this current term. We did have the opportunity to attend once in a term.
Yep.
So if that was a possibility this year, I'd like to take it up.
Sure. Others would like to go? I take it, Alex, that you'll be sponsored by the organisation?
I haven't confirmed that, but we are hosting a Young Elected Members hui the day before the conference kicks off.
So it's reasonable, will be.
So there's a possibility that I'd be sponsored to get there and
Just-
potentially for the first day, but maybe not for the whole conference fee.
Okay. Other ideas or indications of who would like to go? Right. Oh, you Grant?
Yeah, I see some benefit in if we could maybe sending someone from the Bluff Community Board. I attended last year and it was very valuable in terms of those sorts of things.
That their paper was going to their June meeting. They've got their own budget to attend.
Yeah.
May I?
So whether you wanted to reserve one of those, I don't know.
Yep, thank you.
May I
Alex?
make a suggestion? Steve would be invited to the Young Elected Members hui as of right anyway. So may I suggest that to nominate him to go to the full conference, because he'd also probably request alongside me to go to YEM.
So I guess, don't take this the wrong way, Steve.
Sorry, if you don't mind. If you don't mind me nominating you. Yeah.
But when you look at the cluster that are in front of us,
Yeah.
so we have young elected members, we have iwi, we have women, women in council. There's a whole lot of potential people there that might be invited. That's not the invite's not the issue. It's what's our appetite for $2,000, $1,500, $2,000 per person going to these conferences. We've been reasonably frugal in the past. Hence my desire to sort of not go. Open the door for others to go. Yeah, Ringy.
Look, just as a question, what's the cut-off age for a YEM?
40.
40 on the age of election, the day of election.
Okay,
Yes.
wow.
You're out.
Oh, yeah.
You're out, Ringy.
Yeah. Sorry, you're out.
You can't be there.
The reason why it is so high.
That we nominate Tom and Darren to go as their representatives.
Yep, I'm okay with that.
No one else wants to come forward.
Yep.
I don't want to go.
I'll second that.
Probably.
Do you know
Grant,
what
I
I
could
mean?
see you could be useful. Probably
I went last year,
Councillor Broad.
and you can get all the you can get all the shows online.
Yep.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, you can watch
Yeah.
it, and it is very valuable.
Mm.
So yeah, I'd love to, but I think I've been, so I'm happy to step back.
And I've been too, same reason.
Yep.
What's online.
You're paid for. Come back to iwi in a minute. Yeah, sorry, Evelyn.
No, I wasn't asking as Iwi. I just wanted to clarify. Does this come from our professional development budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
So it also comes from the mayoral budget, which I was pleased to know that we've actually got one of those, because I didn't think we did have. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Someone said there's a mayoral budget.
I thought we sorted that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In a minute, Trish. Yeah, Michael.
Through yourself, Chair, just when you're making the nominations, can we be very clear which would be the presiding delegate? And
Yeah,
which would
we'll
be
come to that. Yep, thank you. So I've got at this stage Tom and Darren. Putting you aside for a moment.
Trish wanted to speak.
Oh, sorry, Trish.
I just think, I understand what you're saying, Evelyn, about coming from the professional budget, but I think in terms of a look and in terms of us being lean and trying to get it right, it would be quite good to keep it tight rather than say we can go because it's only 2,000 for the budget. It's about perception as well.
It is very much that. Yep. I mean, I've been to conferences in Wellington with local government New Zealand where one of our adjoining councils had 4 or 5 people there, and I've been the sole one from Invercargill. And it begs the question that their discussion with their community is that they're double-digit rates, and yet 4 or 5 of them go through to Wellington. It's just a perceptual thing.
Yeah, it's perception.
A few $1,000s either way is not going to break the bank in our economy, but it's just a perception of what it is.
I'm just wondering why it's $1,000 a delegate.
Sorry?
I'm just wondering why it's $1,000 a delegate.
You pay for all the speakers.
Sorry?
You pay for all the speakers, guest speakers, the functions, and it includes the Friday night dinner, Saturday night, Friday,
No,
one night.
No, that's separate.
No, that's included.
No, it's separate. You buy a separate ticket price. Yep.
Oh, was it separate last year?
Always been separate.
Yeah, it has, yeah.
Oh, because I didn't think you could opt out of the dinner.
Yep.
So you're quite right. It is about $2,000 a year.
Oh, you have to opt in. Yeah.
So I'll move and nominate also probably Tom to be the spokesperson or the
presiding delegate.
Delegate. Thank you.
Alex?
It usually shouldn't matter really who the presiding delegate is anyway, because usually Mayor Clark will take us through all of the remits and we get a consensus position anyway. It's really just as simple as pressing the button and making sure that you actually turn up.
Yep.
I would just wanted to ask that if I go for the young elected members hui, which will be the day before, and that could I go for the whole conference just as a part piece?
Oh, well, it's not. There's only the accommodation cost really. The flights are still the flights.
In conference cost.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Grant, you've got two nominations.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Leslie.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I was going to suggest that the Deputy Mayor be the presiding delegate, Councillor Ludlow be the alternate, and that we add Councillor Crackett for any additional costs over and above her attendance at YEM, which is going to be paid. Because I think that we do have an obligation to at least one of our young members to be at the whole conference.
Yep.
And Steve seemed to indicate you were happy not to be this time.
Oh, I'm looking here to the YEM conference, so it's a good starting point for me.
The end of year one, and we've got one coming up in October.
Okay, so
A seconder for that motion.
Yeah. So it's adding Councillor Crackett on for whatever costs are necessary that she attends the whole conference. Yeah.
Sure. So we've got that. So we have the issue of iwi attendance. Evelyn, do you want to talk to that?
I don't think I'm particularly comfortable it being phrased that way, but however, I think if Mrs. Coate wants to attend, I would defer to her. However, I know that the organisations that I represent also see value in me going. That would be our decision because it does not involve council funds.
Sure.
On the other hand, if there was an appetite for sending Mrs. Coate, then I, of course, strongly endorse that. I think it's likewise if there is a member from the Bluff Community Board who is an iwi rep, that would be helpful as well, because I think the networking opportunities are not inconsiderable.
So Grant and Leslie, movers and seconders, are you okay with us approving one iwi member to be attended at our cost? Whether there's a second one, could be at iwi's discretion.
I'll be fine with that.
Yep. Okay, any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. And the last thing on the agenda is the elected members and appointed members attendance register.
Move it's received.
Thank you.
Second that.
Didn't need to ask that, did I? Any issues relating to that?
Yes.
Yes, Alex?
On the 19th of the 3rd, 2024, both Darren and I were actually away on local government business at the Drug and Alcohol Harm Reduction Conference in Dunedin. But we're recorded as DNA and apologies. So can we please have that amended, because we got the permission from the Mayor to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Acting.
Yeah, acting.
Mr. Chair, I'd note that I'm for the Finance and Projects meetings, 22nd, 19th of the 3rd and the 16th of the 4th, that I've been noted as ATT, in attendance but not a member of that committee, but I am a member.
Okay.
Got that.
Got that? Yep. Any further discussion? No, I'll put that motion that be received. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. All right, a mover and a seconder to go to PE, Darren and Leslie, thank you.